The operations side was essentially tremendous boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. Okay, because you basically sit around and hope nothing breaks, and then the moment it does, the fire bell rings, and it's now 9:29, and the market opens in 1 minute. And clearly, if it doesn't open, you're a complete failure.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumi Tech, sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Turing, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and in media partnership with CTech. Imagine what it's like being responsible for part of the infrastructure that makes the New York Stock Exchange tick. Well, meet Andrew Bach, Global Financial Technologies Leader. With over 30 years of experience, Andy specializes in network and telecommunications, security, and financial technologies. Andy has substantial expertise to lead strategic communication technological planning to achieve business goals by prioritizing technology initiatives and coordinating the evaluation, deployment, and management of current and future technologies. As a global financial technologies leader, he established strategic direction, led all aspects of technology development and implementation, and provided formal supervision and coaching for the architectural, security, and infrastructure functions while setting the vision to inspire and drive continuous improvements. Andrew F. Bach, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How you doing, Andy?
Fantastic. It's a great day. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here. I'm really excited we made this work because I'm really excited to pick your brain into, an industry and a world that I don't know much about. It sounds really complicated. It sounds like you do really important things. And I'm excited to learn more about you because we had a really fun chat a while back, and I got introduced to this really, really cool person that I can't wait to introduce a lot of my friends and colleagues to. Andy, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and how do you see sort of your journey?
Oh, it's been a fun journey, and I think the most important point there is fun. Technically challenging, but then again, I'm a techno geek at heart, so I enjoy my technology. So that's been good. I would like to say that it's always been brilliantly planned and skillfully executed, as opposed to a fair amount of serendipitous good luck. But I'll go with good luck in terms of job opportunities, and also, more importantly, meeting the right people along the way has really been fun. So what do? In 2 minutes or less, I started off as a coming out of engineering school, convinced I was going to design analog integrated circuits. That died quickly when I went to my first job, where I had the pleasure of designing digital signal processing for sonar systems for the world's navies. So anything you want to know about identifying either a whale that has some issues or an incoming torpedo, I can run you through the mathematics. Not so sure it's a useful skill, but it certainly was interesting at the time learning it and doing it.
Wow.
So that was part of it. Yeah. From there, I really branched out and went to this thing called communications, which, not communications as people tend to think of it today, that thing that you do with the pressers and the media and all that, but rather networking, telephone circuits. And back in the day, it was a lot of telephone circuits. It was about mapping all your data that you wanted to send from one computer to another onto some sort of, basically a conventional phone circuit. I mean, to show my age, I can remember having a conversation about upgrading modems to 19.2 kilobits per second.
Wow.
High-speed transmission at the time. Yeah.
High-speed transmission.
So that's going pretty far back in time.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. And as I lucked out, I had taken a job at a company called Securities Industry Automation Corporation, SIAC. Sure, it's a company no one has ever heard of and never will probably. But if you're in the financial industry, they were a wholly owned subsidiary of the New York and American stock exchanges at the time, and their job was to provide all the technology to the exchanges. And I joined them, started off in their communications department. That became the, communications engineering. And, fast forward some 26 years, and I wound up being, the senior vice president and global head of network services, which really translated to I had anything that had anything to do with communications anyway, whether it was in the data center, the networking, precision timing using atomic clocks, the cell phone that one of the executives accidentally dropped into the toilet in the men's room. All of that was my problem
Wow.
from beginning to end, including the operations. God help me.
And it
So,
doesn't sound too
you got to love
simple.
those calls at 3 o'clock in the morning.
It,
It has its moments. The operations side was essentially tremendous boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. Okay, because you basically sit around and hope nothing breaks, and then the moment it does, the fire bell rings, and it's now 9:29, and the market opens in 1 minute, and clearly, if it doesn't open, you're a complete failure. So,
wow.
the operations side had its challenges. The architecture and the engineering side was phenomenal. You got to build some of the best technology around, so that's what made it really exciting.
Now, you really had to.
You had to. I mean, what people never realized is that the financial industry as a whole is the single largest consumer of technology and early adopter. For a collection of very, conservative, operationally conservative people, it was amazing how much technology you would adopt on the bleeding edge. And, there's fun facts. There were more phone lines by 1896 or so, there were more phone lines going into the New York Stock Exchange than were in all of the New York City.
Wow.
Early adopters of phones.
Huh.
So, and it's just, pick your favorite exchange, pick your favorite brokerage house, and you'll find lots of examples there. At the exchange, we were the first ones to use tablets. And I'm not talking about a tablet from Apple. We're talking about this hacked together, contrived piece of electronics that was custom built for us on the first wireless protocols. It was amazing. First flat panel displays were flat panel touchscreen displays that were actually originally introduced into slaughterhouses. And why did we use those? Because they're incredibly rugged. Huh. In a slaughterhouse, at the end of the day, they come out with a fire hose and wash everything down with salt and chlorine water. So we figured it might hold up for a little bit in our environment, because you had a lot of very impassioned people on the floor. I'll be blunt.
Yeah, I bet. Now, Andrew, I really,
if the trade didn't go their way, they would put something through it.
I really want you to explain to me a little bit about the New York Stock Exchange and I'm imagining myself in a position like you're describing here, being responsible for a lot of the communication, the networking, the telecommunication that needs to go on to power what today millions of people around the world are taking part in every second. That must be a big responsibility.
It is. Fortunately, it's shared amongst a few people at the senior level. One, I had the communications environment. I had a counterpart who had all of security, another counterpart who had all of, I'll put it in quotes, databases, another counterpart who had all of the server farms. And you had to work together as a very close team, obviously, because everything was interconnected. But you really had to be a leading technology expert in that respective vertical. In my world, in the communications, I had to deliver quite literally millions of messages per second with, for all practical purposes, 100% reliability. And you had to do it there was always the running competition to see how fast you could do it. And we were down to comfortably, into the millions of a second.
Wow.
And striving to go lower.
That's just incredible. Now, putting me in that situation, you get to work every day, and you're mentioning on one hand the perhaps not the apprehension, it sounds like, but I'm sure that it wasn't as dramatic of the bell ringing and is everything today going to work well? How at the same time do you balance making sure that everything runs smoothly to continuing to improve and allotting space strategically for both maintenance, but also making sure that the New York Stock Exchange is always using the most up-to-date technologies with the best infrastructure and the best communication?
It's a very tough balance, and you also need, working with you or for you, your team that's extremely good at it. You need a very strong leader on the operations side who really focuses on the day by day, minute by minute, is it up and running, and dealing with that. Then you need the people that are just looking forward. You have a couple that are the true pie in the sky folks that are searching out, new technology that might have some applicability in the next 6 months to a year or 2 years out. And then you've got to have the core team of designers that will then take the dreams of the lead architect and combine it with the realities of the operations manager who says, it's not going online unless I can run it successfully. And try to meld those two together. And in between, you need to, whatever you set for your goals and expectations for today, you look at your calendar and say, okay, I'm going to have 6 meetings. Yeah, no. You know you got 6, but you're going to lose 2 because you have to deal with the unexpected stuff that popped up. There's always something that'll pop up somewhere. Someone did something, or there's an operational issue, or there's a technology challenge, and you've got to carve out an extra hour for that. So the trick to the job was to remain remarkably flexible.
Which sounds difficult.
You had a general sense, a general plan of attack, but boy, you had to adapt real quick.
Wow. And I'm guessing that as you go through, the many other positions that you've held, this is just one of many experiences that you've gotten to be at, partially, the VP and Chief Architect of Financial Services at Juniper, and a phenomenal company, a chairperson of wonderful organizations and member of advisory of wonderful organizations.
Yep.
What do you extract, from a technologically leadership position? What are some things that you've found useful as you've gone through your journey in terms of being a good leader in the technology world?
There's a couple. I think, thinking back on it, I got lucky, or maybe it was brilliant planning. I don't know which. I'll go with luck. I got the New York Stock Exchange experience was the buy side. I was always buying technology, which means I got to beat up on vendors regularly for their product and sort of tell them what they should build. On the Juniper side, it was the exact opposite. I was on the sell side trying to convince people that we should use our architecture, our technology. And of course, they would beat up on me. But I think some of the key aspects, especially on the leadership, is one, listen to your people. Clearly hire the best. Give them the freedom to succeed, which means you've got to put a safety net under them when they don't. Have faith in them because they really are good. Okay. Very rarely do you hire poorly. You go through a normal interview process and most people work out well, and then some work out exceptionally well. And on a very rare occasion do you run into a dud, but that's few and far between. Thank goodness. But the key is to give them the room to strive. Give them the room to go invent their own ideas. You can't be that micromanager who, stays right on top of everything they're doing. Just post a task and say, I'll see you next week on that one. And if you've got some questions, by all means, happy to sit and talk to you about it, but you ought to be able to go figure this out. And it's remarkable what innovative solutions people will produce when you give them the freedom to do that. And then sometimes also accept the fact that they'll come up with a bright idea. You'll agree that it's a bright idea, and it turns out to be wrong. It's a dud. So the answer is you've got to leave that safety net and that cushion that says, hey, you got it right 8 times, and 2 times it was a dud. That's the way it goes.
Right.
It's especially on the technology front, because you're going to try a new technology, and the key phrase there is try. And you're smart. You follow it. So you've got a sense that it's really going to be successful. But once in a while, for all the best intentions, it just wasn't, a perfect fit for whatever reason. So be accepting of the failures. That's almost as important as congratulating the success. And I think the big thing is don't be afraid to acknowledge success. If your team does something good, it's all them.
Right.
Just remind them that they're thank them for making you look good as a manager.
That's really nice.
That's what's really about.
I love that sentence. Thank them for making you look good as a manager. That's a really nice way of putting it.
Because I'm only going to be as good as they are at the end of the day.
Right. Now, how do you empower?
Because I'm not personally.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not on the front line making every single micro decision. So I've got to trust and enable them to make all the right decisions.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
Sure. And now, how do you empower people?
And then clear the way in front of them.
How do you empower them to do exactly that? To you're clearing the way in front of them in one place, but it's easier said than done, right? I mean, you can read a lot of leadership books about, yeah, don't be a micromanager and empower people and give them room and congratulate and accept the failures. But at the end, a lot of it comes down to nuances, right? It comes down to how they perceive you as a leader and how you really mean, and not just, what do you say, but also how you respond and how you act in the day-to-day life. I see that a lot, right?
Yeah, that's true. So there's the mechanical part of it, which is if they want to go explore something, make sure that you secure the funding for them. You shield them from whatever other management entities are there in terms of, people questioning them. You want valid challenges and valid objections, but at some point you want to make sure that it doesn't cross the line to they just like to beat on your people,
right,
for whatever reason. And then you've got to step in and say, excuse me, don't beat on him. I'll take it. I get paid the big bucks. You can beat on me. Okay. I'm a professional whipping boy for my people. You have to do that. You've got to defend and protect them, right? And that's true of any organization. That's not unique to anyone. But the more higher pressure the organization is, the more likely you're find someone who's going to come back and really go after your people.
Right.
So you have to do that. The other thing is, and you've got to communicate this over and over again, is you're available there for them. And you're there to support them and make sure they understand that. Make sure they understand that it's okay to come in and ask the dumb question. If it's, I explain something to you and then, 15 minutes they come back and say, I didn't understand a word you said. Okay, let's go back through it again. So I have to be open to the fact that they didn't get it, but you have to instill in them a sense that it's okay to come back and ask the question again.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
And also they have to learn that it's okay to question you. The last thing you want is someone who, you say, oh, maybe you can do it that way. And they take that as an absolute directive. And you really need to instill in them and convince them that, no, you're allowed to come back and go, excuse me, boss, that's a remarkably stupid idea. You want to try that again? It's okay. I mean, you got to learn how to, and I'll use the cliche, you've got to learn how to park your ego at the door.
Right.
And the trick is managing those egos, because we all have egos, but when you're in a very high-performing organization with very skilled and very talented people, that translates to phenomenal egos. I mean, you think about it. You're in a position where you wake up every morning and you believe that you're going to do a 1 billion share trading day with no problem. And the mere fact that you think you can do that every day already says you've got one heck of an ego.
Wow.
And that's, before you even get your first cup of coffee in you.
Right. Definitely. Now, as you go through and you look through the advancements of technology, and you've seen a lot of them, going back all the way to the high transmission internet that we talked about before, are you surprised? What is it weird for you to see how fast things are moving? Do you feel that you've experienced a lot of these technological innovations because you've really seen, in execution, these technologies and all their phases until now, ever since you started, what it sounds like quite some time ago?
Not overly surprised. And maybe that, goes a little bit back to the era in which my parents grew up. When my father was born, there were no planes in the sky. And yet he saw a man walk on the moon. Okay. Well, if you think about the technology innovation just in that range that he lived through, and the other thing that you need to accept is with every technological innovation that we come up with as a society, that accelerates our next technological innovation. You can always trace back what someone invented today to the prior 3 or 4 things that came before it. And that pace just continues to accelerate. And it has conservatively for the last, at least 400 or 500 years historically.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you think about it, we started with, sharpening developing iron so we could develop a scythe so we could harvest wheat in the field. And somehow we've turned that into a John Deere combine that sweeps across an acre of land in, 5 minutes or whatever they do. It's incredible.
Wow.
Those giant thrashing machines you see nowadays. So pick any space you want, and there's massive innovation. It's human nature. We innovate or we die at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think that
So
today,
I'm not surprised by it.
yeah, today we're saying, the things that I'm observing around, and I grew up in a different era. I grew up in an era where I'm born into a smartphone, and I'm seeing it transform every single day, and I get just so excited about thinking how it transforms. But what I also question a lot is this question of leadership, where we've been talking about, when you've harnessed this idea of technological innovation, but now your job is to empower others to do it, and you had to do that in phenomenal circumstances that I get to talk very rarely to people who've gotten the chance to do it in a similar circumstances, or of similar intensity or nature. That it's just really, really exciting for me to hear those insights. I do have a few fun questions for you if you're ready for them.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, we'll start off easy. We'll get a little bit weirder along the way. Favorite subject in middle or high school?
Oh gosh, you're not going to believe this. It would be engineering. It would be technology.
Doesn't make sense.
I'll phrase this. I'll phrase it somewhat politely. I popped out of my mother as a fully developed engineer. I mean, I was born an engineer.
Wow.
It's as simple as
I
that.
love it.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is. Yep.
One of your role models.
Some people are born with vast musical talents, right? Someone comes out and all of a sudden they're playing the piano by the time they're 8 years old. Well, that certainly wasn't me. I have absolutely no musical talent. But hand me a slide rule, appropriate for that era, and I was off and running.
I love it. One of your role models, or somebody that inspires you.
I've had the pleasure of having a few, but I think the one that's most notable was my last boss at the New York Stock Exchange was a phenomenal gentleman that was a pleasure to work for and inspirational. Now, first of all, he was remarkably brilliant, to say the least. He made me look like I, couldn't even tie my shoelaces. But he'd never tell you that. He'd never, he wouldn't brag about it. But when you start to talk to him, you'd hear little things like, oh yeah, I did my, chemical degree and, undergraduate, graduate, master's degree, got a PhD in this and got a second master's in that and a third master's in that. And I'm fluent in 6 languages, but bump. And then he'd go from there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, again, he wasn't this, you didn't have this swelled head and, I am great and perfect. It was like having a conversation like you and I are having today, just a fun chat. But boy, don't challenge him because he could run circles around you any day.
Amazing.
Yeah, he could outtalk you and outread you anytime he wanted to.
Amazing.
And if you worked hard at it, you could finally get, tease that out of him. But he was such a pleasure to work for and very inspirational. And again, he was the one that talked about giving people the freedom to succeed and accept the fact that once in a while it's going to be a dud. And he was quite the character. He's still rattling around the industry, having a good time, which is great. And he also was highly diversified. It wasn't just focused on the job. He also did some teaching on the side, which then I started to teach on the side, which helps round out your career and objectives. Again, it's not about showing off your ego. It's about learning from the students. It's really fun to try to explain a technical subject to a group of people who are interested in learning, but they don't get it. And it really reminds you and grounds you in how you need to explain things. There was nothing more educational to me than actually teaching a few classes at the college level.
I love it. Last question. 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Sure. So I thought about this a little bit because that question does pop up from time to time from other people too. I guess one of them obviously is techno geek. I was born and raised an engineer from the get-go. It is what it is. Like I said, some people are master cello players. I'm a really good, I'm an engineer. That's what I am. Second, well, let me not say second. In no order of preference, family. It's about raising the family, caring for the family, having that commitment to other people. I have been blessed with a wonderful wife, 2 fantastic kids, throwing a grandson now. It's all good stuff. And what's amazing is we'll hang out together. There are many tales that I won't recount because it's probably inappropriate of going drinking with my kids. Ah, okay. Yeah, so much so that maybe it was one of the kids that had to drive me home on occasion,
Wow.
that sort of thing. But that's about a family bond
Yeah.
also. Um, Again, not by brilliant planning, as opposed to it just sort of evolved that way, and you sort of learn along the way. But you see these families that just they don't get along, they don't talk. Yeah, this family's fortunately quite the opposite. And then I guess I got to throw in just for fun a little bit of a wino. I am definitely cultivating the wine side of my hobbies and business. So I've got a nice little wine cellar going. I've put on my bucket list that I'm going to get to all the wineries on Long Island and try all their wines.
Wow.
Well, there's about 70 wineries. Each one puts out about 10 to 15 wines. You can do the math. I'm going to be drinking for a long time.
It sounds phenomenal. Andy, I want to thank you so much for joining me. This was just lovely, insightful. I really enjoyed it. And I appreciate all the insights
Oh,
and your time. It was really great. Thank you.
thank you. And I had a great time also. My pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.